Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel called zuzanareacts, where I learn all things Para with your help and I from my Slovak Central European point of view. And in today's video we're going to look into how the Indian soft power is apparently influencing the world. But before we get into the video,
please like this video and click on the subscribe button and turn on the notification. Thank you so much for your support.
Okay, so without further ado, let's just get into the video.
Appreciated more across the world.
I am a big fan of Hindu and I am a big fan of India. Big fan.
Nick Macro says, quote, I discovered India in the path of dharma, which makes us responsible, each one of us in our respective fields and in solidarity with everyone for the order of the world.
The President of the United States himself walked up to PM Modi and greeted him with a warm hug.
Yeah, the Indians, that's a fascinating culture, right? For thousands of years, they've been doing yoga.
Yeah, I just watched Triple R recently, and I thought the film was incredible. If I was so lucky to work with them, that'd be fantastic.
But if you're over the age of 10 and you remember a world before dance challenges and e-girl thirst traps, you may remember that this has not always been the case.
The faithful must give alms as well as pray to make sure the son is saved. But the gentleman with the snake is just cashing in. Must be awfully hard to say no to a python. In the thick of it all, cows walk where they will. To Hindus, they are holy.
Remember that racist cartoon?
Okay. What is this?
Remember that racist cartoon?
Okay. No sound.
Quite a different view of India since those times.
It's a shame that he actually did not try to repost this video, because I think we now will not be able to get to his point because the whole thing was mute.
Country is showing itself to the world as the land of space explorers rather than just the land of snake charmers. India over the last couple of decades has significantly developed its hard power in terms of economic, political, and military strength. This has allowed India to flex its soft power, which is where India's growing cultural influence comes in. What is soft power and how is India flexing it? Well, let's find out. So let's first try to find out what soft power really is.
Soft power is a lot of things, including influence, persuasion, reputation, and the ability to get something done without force.
And India has been blessed with vast reserves of soft power. Yoga is already a $37 billion industry. Ayurveda is already a $5 billion industry. Indian entertainment is turning into a huge global industry. Just Bollywood made $1.28 billion in 2022. If you add other Indian film industries, this number can easily quadruple. Meditation and mindfulness.
There are other things besides Bollywood. Wow, I had no idea, you guys. This is mad. Okay, all right, I see ya.
Are projected to become a nearly $25 billion market by 2030. In terms of sports, cricket has the potential to do for India what the English Premier League did for England. Did you know that the Indian Premier League is already the 4th richest league in the world? India has always had this soft power potential, but until just a little while ago, there hasn't been a concerted attempt to utilize it, to harness it, and to spread it. It's like India has had the powers of Spider-Man, but have never gotten around to using them to save New York.
Wait! Who are you?
Until recently, India was going through a severe identity crisis. The Indian political leadership, as well as the people in charge of India's education system, were hell-bent on presenting Indians with a version of India which portrayed them as a defeated people who possessed nothing of value to offer the world. In fact, everything valuable that India had been provided to them by foreign invaders. In fact,
is this correct? Like, that's how you've been taught and that's what your leader's been telling you? Because it's shocking that someone is telling you have nothing of value, considering the wealth of value you have. Wow. Please do let me know. This comes as a shock, really.
Even today, And until recently, there are cities and public places that are named after brutal foreign invaders. Places like Firozshah Kotla Stadium, Aurangzeb Road, Allahabad, Bakhtiyarpur. The history textbooks have only showcased Indian history as a series of Indians losing battle after battle.
Is that it is not our history at all. It is really the history of foreign invaders. When you read Indian history, it is a long litany of battles that the Indians lost. And it's about the 3 battles of Panipat. It's about the Battle of Plassey and the Battle of Buxar. But you never read anything about the battles that the Indians won through spilling a lot of blood. And we won quite a lot of times. And that is why we continue to exist, because it was not as if those who invaded us did not try to forcibly change and dominate us.
Our historians have told us that India has only been enriched by foreign invaders.
Mughals made India rich. Mughals enriched Indian arts. They gave us the Taj Mahal. They gave us beautiful gardens. Even samosa and biryani are claimed as dishes handed over to us by the Mughals.
मुगलों ने भारत को अमीर बनाया और ये एक तथ्य है.
It is a very narrow view of India, overshadowing India's triumphs and achievements. The valor of India's Rajput kings, the strategic might of the Marathas, the refusal of the Ahom kings to be defeated, how the southern kingdoms preserved Indian culture, language, and heritage while it was being destroyed in northern India. The unrelenting 1,000-year war of independence fought by Indians across the length and breadth of the country. And the crazy thing is that this identity crisis was forcibly put into the heads of Indians by India's political leadership, starting from the very first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, who made an avowed Islamist, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, the first education minister of India.
Maulana Azad asked Indian Muslims to fight to preserve the Islamic Caliphate. If a thorn gets stuck in a Turk's soul in the battlefield of war, then I swear by the God of Islam, no Muslim of India can be a Muslim until he feels that prick in his heart instead of soul, because the Millat-e-Islam is a single body. He even criticized liberal Muslims who did not side with him in support of the Caliphate, calling them munafiqeen or hypocrites, and saying that the time had come to discriminate between faith and non-belief.
Things didn't get any better with Nehru's successor, Indira Gandhi, who made an avowed communist, Nurul Hasan, the education minister of India. These leftist historians essentially had a monopoly on what was taught to generations of Indian students.
The Jawaharlal Nehru University, or the JNU, was the brainchild of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and Hasan. JNU was meant to produce and train the core of a committed bureaucracy who were to be loyal to the ideals of the left. The institution took a sharp left turn thanks to the curricula and faculty carefully chosen by Hasan from his pool of pro-communist teachers. Over the years, many of the faculty posts were held by the left or liberal academics.
In fact, their power was so big that they started interfering in major Indian civilizational issues like the Ram Mandir movement in the 1990s.
And in the 80s, Muslims were almost, many of the Muslims, then top leaders were also almost ready to hand it over so that, a problem could be solved. This historian, especially Professor Irfan Habib, they came and they said, no, it has been, the place has been excavated by Professor B.B. Lal. And he did not find any material from there. And so Muslims, you should not hand it over the place to Hindu community.
There was an agreement among the left historians and archaeologists that the big four, that is R.S. Sharma, D.N. Jha, Romila Thapar and Irfan Habib, they will not present themselves in court, but they will send their colleagues and students to make statements in court. He is shown to have any expertise, but they were just motivated by their bias, that they have to make statements against the temple, and they went to any extent.
This led to only the leftist perspective on history and Indian politics being taught in India. An objective view on India was buried, and all alternative voices like Sitaram Goyal, Ram Swarup, Girilal Jain, Veer Savarkar, N.S. Rajaram, R.C. Majumdar were seen as a challenge to the leftist monopoly and deliberately curtailed. There was such a leftist monopoly on Indian education for such a long time that even today, an American right-wing commentator like Ben Shapiro refers to a far left historian named Ramchandra Guha to understand India. He would never refer to far-left sources to understand America, but he does so for India because that's all that's available to him. He may as well read Hafiz Saeed's speeches to understand Indian culture and politics then. In fact, it took 75 years after Indian independence for the first serious work on Savarkar to be published. Remember, this is Veer Savarkar, who is seen as the father of arguably the most influential political and social movement in India right now, called Hindutva. And even economically, India was struggling. The Indian economy had been crippled by socialist policies. India had to mortgage its gold just to keep the country running. In fact, due to India's socialist policies, it had to be placed in the Fragile Five group. But thankfully, slowly, over the past decade and a half, things started to change. India recovered on three fronts: the political front, the economic front, and as a result of that, the cultural front. With the advent of the Modi government, there has been a political environment where India's civilizational revival has started from the top down and the bottom up simultaneously. The environment has been created to redevelop India's soft power and to finally start spreading it across the world. So how did that happen? Well, let's look at the three aspects. Let's start with economic. The days of India being in the Fragile Five are thankfully over. The UN has reported that India will be one of the few bright spots in a world rife with recession. India has surpassed the UK to become the fifth largest economy on planet Earth, and soon it will become the third largest economy. India is constructing infrastructure at a breakneck speed. It is constructing roads right now at the pace of roughly 30 kilometers per day. Moreover, India launched the Jal Jeevan mission to give tap water to every citizen of the country, and the results are quite positive. The number has reached 13 crores today, which is around 70% of all Indian households. India is also becoming a massive manufacturer of electronics, and even Apple and Samsung smartphones are starting to be manufactured in India. You can also look at India's growing political power. According to the World Migration Report 2022, India has the largest immigrant population in the world, making it the top origin country globally. The Indian diaspora also is the enabler of the world's largest remittance economy, worth $100 billion, which is roughly half of Pakistan's GDP and soon might even surpass Pakistan's GDP. Just when you thought things couldn't get more embarrassing for Pakistan, more embarrassing than selling donkeys, women, and even your embassies to pay for food and electricity, but here we bloody are.
Oh, shit.
Now this diaspora is also flexing its political muscle. The Prime Minister of the UK, Rishi Sunak, is of Indian origin and is from the Conservative Party. One of the most popular Republican, that is conservative candidates in America is an Indian origin man named Vivek Ramaswamy.
So I'm a Hindu. There's many strains like there are Christianity, Catholicism, etc. There's many strains of Hinduism too. I believe in one true God. I believe that that God resides in each of us. I think it is the same statement of spirit when we say in the Christian tradition, and I did go to Catholic schools and I've read the Bible perhaps more closely than most Christians I know. It's the same message as when we say we are equal because we are made in the image of God. And I'm not running to be pastor-in-chief. I'm running to be commander-in-chief. It's a different role, right? And for that role, I think we share the same value set.
The Indian vote in Western countries is slowly shifting to the right. Domestically, the Indian government has made some power moves where it has managed to stay neutral in the Russia-Ukraine war while still maintaining friendly relations with Western countries. It has also managed to remain neutral between the Israel-Palestine issue while keeping good relations with Israel and developing very meaningful relations with Arab Muslim countries. At the G20 meeting this year, India announced the Middle East Economic Corridor that included Israel as well as two Arab Muslim nations in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. India was one of the bright spots during the COVID pandemic, where it provided vaccines to multiple countries in dire need, as well as to the UN peacekeeping forces. Another feat that India achieved was bringing the African Union into the G20 when it had the opportunity to host the G20 meeting this year. This has led to significant goodwill between the African countries and India. The vision that India has for Africa is also very different from the vision that China has for Africa. While China traps poor countries in debt traps and captures their nation's key assets, like it did with Sri Lanka and multiple countries in Africa, India, on the other hand, wants Africa to develop, sees Africa with an angle of mutual respect. India's stance in Africa has been praised by many African leaders.
We're quite delighted at the leadership demonstrated by Prime Minister Modi. And
Prime Minister Modi has laid a very strong basis for
for the South. India is also leading the way in green energy. India stands fourth globally in renewable energy installed capacity, fourth in wind power capacity, and fourth in solar power capacity. India has set a target to reduce the carbon intensity of the nation's economy by less than 45% by the end of the decade and achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2070. And these massive economic and political changes have provided Indians with the self-confidence that they've been lacking for so many decades. And that self-confidence is now leading to some significant cultural changes in the country. Finally, an objective or right-of-center view on Indian history and politics is being developed. Authors like Sanjeev Sanyal, J. Sai Deepak, Vikram Sampath have become best-selling authors in India. Even fiction books based around Indian history and Indian itihas are becoming national bestsellers. Pro-India entertainment is also very popular. Ramam, Ramam, Ranadhiram,
वक्त आ गया है खून का बदला खून से लेने का।
नया हिंदुस्तान ये घर में घुसेगा भी और मारेगा भी।
And we've seen the growing influence of these movies even outside of India.
There were moments in that film where I just had to get up.
I had never seen anything like this film.
You guys ready? Ooh! RRR!
And due to the increasing self-confidence of Indians, they're more willing to speak up for their rights. Indian festivals are going worldwide. Both Trump and Biden have celebrated Diwali in the White House. Rishi Sunak celebrated Diwali at 10 Downing Street. Holi and Diwali were recently declared official holidays in New York City. More cities across the United States are also expected to adopt these two holidays as official holidays. The Indian government, through celebrating World Yoga Day every year and taking leadership of World Yoga Day, is trying to put India right in the center of the growing global yoga, meditation and mindfulness market. Paganism is becoming more and more popular in the West, and it is leading to more and more Westerners exploring Indian spirituality. Even domestic.
By the way, the thing is that paganism has been popular. Okay, I've been in spirituality for over 20 years now. Good 15 years. I can tell you that I've been reading a lot about paganism, and when I say about this thing, that's kind of when I already, or maybe not 15, maybe 10. When I already been in the UK. So this is where I was reading things like Soul and Spirit, Spirit Destiny magazines, and through that you could find out, you know, your community, your crowd. And I would also go to like spiritual fairs and stuff like that when they were like somehow reachable and, you know, closer. And yeah, and it wasn't like I think that there is this negative connotation when it comes to paganism, but I really don't think that's there would be there for people that are not maybe in a spiritual community, but once you're spiritual, you get it, right? So there is no negativity. But I think what he's saying is that the people are more and more acceptance of these kind of things and practices, because wild statement, take it as you will, I do feel like there is an existing crisis in the West, because we are a capitalistic driven society, and the value is put on almost your value as a human is deducted to how much money you make and what is your rank in society. But I guess I'm sure this must be similar also in India, because I've been hearing that if you want to get to medical college, you have to be neuroscientist or whatever kind of stuff, just, you know, to look good in your family, and because these are perhaps the best paid jobs. But for example, if you Indians, any students listening to this, go study dentistry, you will be so rich in the West. You will. I mean, there is a growth period where you will be in debt, but after that, after maybe a decade, you'll be flying and you'll be sorted for the rest of your life. Trust me, it is so expensive here, and apparently in India, this is not valued. Here, it is like you'll be rich. You'll be rich. You just make a lot of money. And not only that, you'll have your own kind of, we call it ambulance in Slovakia, but it's kind of like your office, you know, because you run your own kind of, you do this in your own little room. So, you know, you'll be your own boss. You'll schedule your own hours, as opposed to being the super fancy neurosurgeon who has to adhere to hospital policies. You'll be on a call 24/7. You'll have no life. But with dentistry, you'll rich. You'll be your own boss. You can schedule your own time. Happy days. I don't quite get the whole statusy things, but essentially, I think in the West we are experiencing crisis in identity, and the value of person equals money is kind of like I don't believe people consciously think about that, but it's like, okay, well, because I'm in a shitty job or I'm not being paid this much money, I think subconsciously many people translate it like that, because achievements are praised at like, this is the biggest company I made, this is right? But I think I wish we started to talk about like, how did I improve as a person? How many people did I positively impact through my personality? Not through my money, because you can do a lot good. And I'm not, saying that making money is a bad thing. I think it's a very good thing because you can help money. But like outside of taking money aspect, how did you positively impact people in your life, in your surrounding, just by you being you, improving you? That is where I believe we should be all aspiring, but that's just me. I would love to know what you think, but let's continue.
Domestically, Indians are finally reclaiming their long-lost temples, like the Ram Mandir, and many massive and grand temples are coming up across the world, including one in New Jersey in America, the world's tallest religious monument in Vrindavan in Uttar Pradesh, the Umiya Mata Mandir in Gujarat, the temple of the Vedic Planetarium in West Bengal, which will be the largest temple in the world. It's quite incredible the effect that India's growing military, political, and economic power has had on India's self-confidence. They feel much more confident in evangelizing their cultural identity. The West grew so successful and has such cultural influence over the rest of the world because of its soft power. And India is now starting to do the same. And I want to ask you, how would you like to see India grow its soft power outside of India in the rest of the world? Let me know your thoughts and your suggestions in the comments.
So very, very, very interesting video for me. I actually really love that video. Outside of my little rant that I just had, what actually occurred to me at the very start, and I would love to know your point of view. So hear me out. So I know you guys, you love your political content, etc., right? You know my position on it, and I think it's a waste of my time and whatever, right? Like it has a more deeper spiritual, context to it. If you guys would love to kind of really know, I don't know if you can really get into my head, but there's a really good book called Reality Transurfing, and it talks about like what kind of energy we feed and where it's, I think right now, and I've read hundreds of books by now, for me, it's a #1 book everyone should read, and I haven't even finished it, but it is so good. It's called Reality Transurfing. I will try to link it in the comments. I believe everyone should read that book. Regardless what you believe, you should read that book. So you know that I'm apolitical. I couldn't care less, right? And there is a lot of obviously political comments and etc. And some people like, oh, you're doing leftist or rightist videos and whatever. And I could not care less. I do videos based on, your recommendations or whatever. It looks interesting to me. I don't go and research like this is a leftist video because I couldn't give 2 Fs about that. Okay, I'm going to be as direct as that. I don't. But what I think has happened here for me in this video is that because you're commenting so heavily about politics, which I don't care about, is that it has become really the way India has been shaped is, and of course it's through politics, but I don't know why in this video, the way he is explained it and its influence on education, like for example, we had communism here. So all our books were, like in favor of Russia, blah, blah, blah. So I think now I feel I kind of am starting to open up to the idea why politics is so important. And because I think, and you let me know if I'm right or wrong, right? It is still like anything that's happening, it is still like drastically shaping your identity as a nation. Versus for me in here, the identity of Slovak ethnic group, because, you know, remember, like, you are huge, you know, many different states and many different cultures, etc. But for us here, I think we are more homogenic. We have the same belief systems, and we have a same kind of ethnic group understanding. Let's say in Europe, like, you're strongly French, you're strongly German, you're strongly Slovak, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to fight for that identity. And I don't think that that identity has been perhaps as manipulated by politics, although I believe in Slovakia it has. But maybe in other nations it hasn't as much as it perhaps has been with you. So this is why you are like, oh, this is leftist, rightist. But I never in my head even go there. Okay, so you need to understand that. Like, I don't look at things, this is left and right. I wish the narrative could like end, but obviously it is what it is, and just get to balanced decision. But we know what how the world works, etc. So I think the biggest insight from this video for me I had was about, now I feel like I'm starting to understand why you care so much for the politics. And it has to do a lot with your national identity. And I was really, really shocked when they talked about the fact that India is kind of like the government was trying to actually, okay, our government in Slovakia does nothing to enhance what I would say Slovak national kind of identity. But here, over there, to even bury that and say that you have no value, to me, it's batshit crazy. Batshit crazy. So now I get why you're actually talking about that. And I actually recently bought like a new notepad. I want to show this to you because I know I've had these conversations about politics with you in the comments, and you know why it is important to watch politics. And you guys, I totally get that. And when you know, this guy is actually one, I don't know, you can see that. He is one of the most important Slovak kind of people. Like, he's the one who has helped Slovakia. As if it wasn't for him, first Czechoslovakia would have never happened. He was he went to French army and he became very high in French rank and pushed for Czechoslovakia to become a country. And what he has said is like at the back, but it's in Slovak. So I'll just try to translate this to you. And he says, who thinks that the freedom is going to be fought by others on their behalf is not worth of that freedom. And I was thinking, wow, this is just so profound. And I feel like maybe you guys are also like still fighting that battle for your identity, and maybe this is why you're so deeply involved with that. And to me, if that is the case, and let me know if it's not, because in that way it would make sense where you're, you know, where you're saying or doing what you're doing. So it is fascinating, a really fascinating video for me, and I hope you can, you know, shed some insight from your end, how you perceive what I've just said. If I'm, you know, on track, off track, you know, different, whatever, I'm happy to, you know, learn and inquire more. It's very interesting topic, but you have, you know, uplifted yourself as a country, been through identity. You know what I'm also thinking? It would be always so nice, and I'm just thinking like every country has their own psychology. And I feel like India has their own psychology, and, you know, Slovakia has their own psychology as a country. And I wonder if there are actually even studies, or if psychologists are actually even exploring subjects like that. If you can look at the collective of people's opinions and moods and try to, you know, draw some insights from that, would be pretty fascinating to understand. But I mean, obviously yoga meditation is because the lives in the West are pretty shit. People have a lot or not so much these days after the recession. It's pretty bad. But there is the identity crisis. And I think this is where mindfulness and meditation, it's a huge, huge market. So in the West, and you guys have it right there. You're born with it, which is pretty nice. So gosh, so much for me to think about. Please do let me know about what I've inquired. It's pretty fascinating for me to understand. I'm still shocked that they would just say that you guys have no value. This is just so wrong, at least in my opinion. With that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, please give a thumbs up, share, like, and subscribe to this channel. And I'll see you next one. Until then, please do take care. I'm sending much love. Bye-bye.